morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at a brand new EX from White Flare. It is Bouffalant EX, and I, for one, think this looks pretty gosh darn cool. They did that thing they do sometimes on the Japanese YouTube channel where they gave you information piece by piece. It's from White Flare, colorless basic, retreat cost of 2, weakness to fighting. But then they showed us the ability called Afro Guard. And I think at that point, everyone watching the video went, oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. Also, I kind of think my Japanese is just about good enough for these quizzes now, so I want more of them, because I can join in, and it's fun. I was thinking Bouffalant, but seeing the ability called Afro Guard, yeah, that'll do quite nicely. Of course, it's got 220 HP, which a lot of basic EXs now do go up to 230, so there's an argument it's a little bit lower than we would like. And it's got the ability Afro Guard, which means it takes 30 less damage from attacks. However, here's something fun you can do. Combine it with the Bouffalant from Stellar Crown, which has Curly Wall, a very similar thing, that as long as you have at least one other Bouffalant in play, all of your basic colorless Pokemon take 60 less damage from attacks. Now, one very important point to note, and we've known this for years, but let me reiterate. Bouffalant and Bouffalant EX have different names. So you cannot have your Bouffalant EX in the active and bench one Stellar Crown Bouffalant and then get Curly Wall active, because you don't have two Bouffalant in play. You have one Bouffalant and one Bouffalant EX, which is not the same thing. You will need two of the basic Bouffalant in addition to the EX in order to get Curly Wall working. But when you do, you're taking 90 less from attacks. That's incredibly relevant. And you know what? If we want to, we can actually keep this going a little bit. We can play something like Defiance Best. Now, you do have to be behind on prizes, but that will mean you take 40 less. So while you're behind on prizes, you will be taking 130 damage less from attacks if you've got your two Bouffalant, you're using this, and you've got Defiance Vest rolling. Not saying it's always going to work. I'm saying it could be fun. Or you could just use leftovers to heal 20 damage at the end of your turn. It's not quite the same as reducing the damage, but it's not a million miles away, which is kind of cool. There are a couple of other ones, but they're for stage ones or fighting Pokemon. They don't work, basically, is where I'm going with this. But certainly combining this with, say, a Defiance Vest or leftovers, I do think this could be very fun. Basically go full tank here. And I think this is actually kind of cool. A basic Pokemon that you can honestly fairly easily build up to be a bit of a tank. By the way, I should also mention Bravery Charm here. This is a basic Pokemon, so you can use Bravery Charm to get the extra 50 HP. And the question essentially becomes, do you want to take less damage from attack with Defiance Vest? Which, as a side note, I do think is the best of them. But I also think that it only works if you're behind on prizes, which is a little bit annoying. But obviously here, you're already reducing damage by 90. So if you can keep that train rolling, I do think that is the best way to go. Or if you're taking multiple hits anyway, leftovers could end up being the better way around. Or, like I say, you can just go ahead and use Bravery Charm here to essentially have 270 HP while taking 90 less from attacks. And any of these seem like pretty good options to me, and that's how I want to play Bouffalant. I want to turn this dude into a tank. I want to make sure that my opponent has to hit me multiple times in order for this to actually work. Now, honestly, I'm kind of annoyed that we don't have Cherin right now, Cherin's Care. That was a really fun card, and it worked beautifully here to let you pick up one of your damaged colorless Pokemon, but that was from Brilliant Stars. That one got hit by the rotation. Sorry, that would have been really cool. Never mind. But you can still use Professor Turo's Scenario to put a Pokemon into your hand, or Penny to put a basic Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your hand. So you know what? We've still got options here for picking them up. Because this is the kind of Pokemon where what I really want to do is I want to sit here and just not let my opponent take a prize unless I absolutely have to. Build up my HP, use tools, use other Bouffalant, tank away, and obviously Penny is the better option here because you get all the cards attached to it going into your hand as well. So, tools, energy, things of that nature to get preserved. You can use Pescatore Scenario as well, but you got to discard the cards, which you might not want to do. So we're tanking pretty nicely here. Do we have any good attacks? Well, we have one attack. Free colorless energy, 100 damage. But if you are attacking a Pokemon EX, if your opponent's active Pokemon is an EX, you deal 100 more damage. Okay. That works for me, ladies and gentlemen. That works for me very nicely indeed. And look, this is not enough damage. Let's be perfectly clear. This isn't enough damage. Doing 200 damage? No. Like most EXs are like 220 or 230, you're not going to get them. Now, if we're talking about weak support EXs, yes, you're good. That Squawkabilly, it's going down. That Mew, it's going down. There are support EXs that you will get here, and that will be fine. Although, annoyingly, for Serendipity, you're actually 10 HP away. It's not the end of the world, because there are ways to do an extra 10 damage, but it is annoying that the most prominent support Pokemon is actually going to be just 10 damage out of reach here. That is kind of annoying. I'm not a huge fan of this. But the good news is, as a colorless Pokemon, we've got ways of getting energy on here. Now, there is that new special energy, that ignition energy, which is coming in Black Bolt and White Flare. Can't use that. That is free colorless energy, and that would be amazing, but it's only free colorless energy when it's attached to an evolution Pokemon, and this is not an evolution Pokemon, it's a basic. Good news, you get to use Penny, yay! Bad news, you don't get to use ignition energy, boo, hiss, etc. But you've got Glass Trumpet. Glass Trumpet will accelerate energy here from your discard pile to 2 bench Pokemon. So as long as you get 2 Bouffalant down, then every Glass Trumpet should give you 2 energy, 1 onto each of 2 Bouffalant. And then, of course, you can use whatever type of energy you like. So that means you can tech in whatever Pokemon you like. You can use any other way of accelerating energy here that you like. You're going to be fine. For me, I love this as a bit of a I'm going to block and you ain't going to win deck. And obviously, if we're going along those lines, Munkidori. This seems like a deck which is crying out for Munkidori. Now, we do need to start thinking about your bench at some point here. Because, you know, you've got to have 2 Bouffalant down. Then you start building Munkidori and any other draw engines, etc. you need. But the thing with Munkidori is that once you put a Darkness Energy on there, you can move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponents. This will help to deal with the fact that your damage output is a little bit lower than you'd like. It doesn't matter what type of energy you play, because Bouffalant is colorless, so you can play Darkness pretty easily. And if you're using, if you're using Glass Trumpet well enough, then you can probably afford your attachment for the turn to go on to Munkidori here, as an example. And don't get me wrong, you can tech Bouffalant into anything here, because it's a colorless Pokemon, still takes 30 less from attack, still does 200 to EXs and all of that. I don't think that is the best way to use Bouffalant, not personally. When I look at this Bouffalant, the thing that gets me a little bit excited is the idea of just going full tank. Just coming out here and going, right, well, I'm taking 30 less anyway. Now Bouffalant says I'm taking 90 less. Now I've got something else which is either giving me extra HP or healing at the end of my turn, or meaning I take even less damage. And from there, ladies and gentlemen, I am absolutely loving this. Basically making it super hard to KO, picking it up with Penny, and round we go. So I'm going to go ahead and give this between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would be barbaric. Maybe there's going to be too many decks that can one-hit KO this. Maybe it's never going to work. But I see this as a way to just tank with our old friend. And that makes me pretty gosh darn happy. But I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Get us! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Stegoraptor, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely person and has actually helped us out with a bunch of stuff as well. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.